So we're going to have a very short intro to Meraki. I'm not sure of everyone's expertise in terms of the Meraki technology on today's session, so we're going to have a brief recap to set a baseline level where everyone knows what we're going to be going through, but we're really not going to spend too much time on that. I'm going to look more at the case study with Navigator Schools. Now, one of the highlights of that, I think, is probably going to be the live demonstration of the network infrastructure and the Meraki technology, and a discussion of how that's used to run the network day to day. Now, one of the great things about the session this morning is that you have myself, you have Tanya, and we have Benjamin from Navigator Schools, all available on the WebEx, and we are really happy to make this an interactive session. So ask us questions. If there's something you want to see or something you want to know, please use the question and answer box in the GoToWebinar control panel. You'll be able to see it in there. We'll be looking at those live throughout today's session, so don't feel like you have to wait just until the end. So we do have some time reserved just at the end for Q&A, but you can ask throughout today's session and we'll try and answer those for you. Especially if it involves the live demonstration, we might even be able to show you live while we go through it. We're also going to have a quick review of the product families available for Meraki and what they offer, and that's going to be the end of our hour today. So with that, let's carry on. About Cisco Meraki. Well, a little bit of history for you. Meraki was founded in 2006 as a research project from MIT. Now, at that time, the researchers were looking into wireless mesh technology and to create this sort of shared community wireless that was very efficient and easy to use. Now, they found that the technology was very good, and they had some interest from some investors who happened to be at Google, who gave them some funding to produce the first set of access points. And these were focused purely on wireless mesh technology. Now, one of the things they realized very early on was that the wireless mesh and having all these devices needed a couple of core concepts behind them to really be successful. And the first was it had to be very easy to manage. That's because it was used by all sorts of people, not just IT professionals or networking professionals, but people who just needed connectivity or other types of access to the network. And so they decided that if they were going to expand, if they were going to make this a very successful technology, it needed to have very easy to use management. The second thing was that all of this wireless technology, the nodes, the access points were all over the place, sometimes on different floors, sometimes in different buildings, sometimes in different parts of the country. And so remote management was also a key feature that they had to develop at the very beginning. And so Meraki is focused on ease of use, manageability and control of your network infrastructure. And as the company grew over time, we decided to build other networking products which focused on these core concepts. Rather than just wireless, we now do enterprise security, unified threat management. We do access and aggregation switching, as well as mobile device management with Systems Manager. And all of these devices are controlled and managed from a central cloud architecture that we host and manage for all of our customers, and you access through one intuitive user interface called Dashboard, which we'll be looking at in our demonstration. And in 2012, Cisco acquired Meraki for $1.2 billion. This was a real stamp of approval by the industry's giant in that cloud networking is here to stay, and a really important technology for customers globally to be able to do more with their network infrastructure, spend less time configuring it, more time getting what the business wants done, being able to support students, education, and so on. So Meraki has now been part of Cisco for a couple of years. We're one of the fastest growing business units within Cisco and continue to produce new products, new access points, new security appliances and new switches alongside the existing Cisco products that you're used to. Now, Meraki has become an incredibly popular technology in the K-12 space as well as higher education. And one of the things that really stands out is education requires really powerful technology. It's not a world where you have users that are very easy to manage. They tend to have very high demands. My personal experience is that education and students are the most demanding and most aggressive of wireless users that you will come across. They have very little care for their impact on the network in comparison to, say, a corporate user. And they really have this appetite for new technology that tends to be very high consumption in bandwidth and other things. So to have a technology that's very powerful, that gives you control such as firewalling, traffic shaping, bandwidth controls, support for high density, yet is really easy to use, is really important. It's not that you're going to have a whole team of CCIEs and highly skilled experts that you can afford to maintain as an education establishment, like maybe a large corporate bank could do to provide this high performance network. You need that high performance, but you also need it to be very easy to operate. So what are the benefits of the cloud in terms of the specifics? And I like to see this as two areas. One that I call the hard benefits that are immediately obvious, and one that I call the soft benefits. And to be able to talk about these, I'm going to sort of very briefly highlight the Meraki topology, the sort of cloud architecture itself. So you have the Meraki network devices, and then you have the Meraki cloud, which is a highly scalable, highly distributed software platform for the management and control of all Meraki products and networking devices, which is hosted and managed by Meraki for you. There is no virtual machine, there are no appliances, there's no servers. All of that is taken care of and managed by us for all of our customers globally. And we require a very small amount of management traffic between the device and our cloud to be able to control them. On average, that's 1 kilobit per second per Meraki network device. So if you have 100 access points, you need 100 kilobits per second. Now, what are those hard benefits I was talking about in having this type of architecture? Well, it means you can scale as high as you want and whenever you want without having to worry about what's behind it. So there are no controllers for your wireless access system. You don't have to buy a controller that supports 100 access points because you need 100 in the future. You just buy 1 AP, 10 APs, or 10,000 access points, and we manage support those seamlessly without you having to buy or scale anything else. So it's very flexible in terms of the needs of your school, of your education establishment in how you want to grow it in the future. And I often see the case where people come into a little bit of budget and they're like, oh, well, we need a bit more coverage here, or we've had so many people go outside because the weather's been nice. We'd love to be able to support learning in the outside environment, maybe classes out in the playground, for example. So let's buy some outdoor access points. Well, we don't need to worry about scaling the controller because there is none. So that becomes a really simple equation, a very simple and easy to manage situation. And you buy 1 access point and 1 license for that access point, and you get everything. There's no licenses for special features or anything like that. You get everything that you may need now and all the things that may come in the future. So the concern can sometimes be, okay, we have this cloud infrastructure and it's infinitely scalable, no bottlenecks, we can add stuff very quickly and easily, but what about security? What about if the cloud is not available? Well, because no user traffic passes into the cloud, it's only for management and control, it means that it is highly secure. We can support HIPAA compliance in the healthcare industry in the United States, as well as PCI compliance, so that's for the payment card industry. It's making sure your credit card data stays safe and doesn't get stolen. So we're really able to support these high security environments because none of that user data goes into the cloud infrastructure. And then the knock-on effect of that is because none of the user data goes into the cloud, it means the network keeps operating if your internet connection goes down or you can't access the cloud infrastructure. So say your WAN goes down and the Meraki switches or access points can't talk to the cloud infrastructure, they will continue to operate using their existing configuration, and when that connection comes back up, then you can start managing them again. So you don't have to be concerned that if your WAN goes down, no one's going to be able to access any of the local resources or connect to the local computer to print out some worksheets for the next class. That will continue to operate. So hopefully it should start to become apparent why it can be quite a good choice to choose Meraki in the K-12 environment. So we talked about this really easy to use management. I'm hoping that some of the stories we're going to hear shortly are going to give us some specific examples of how that really helps when you're in an education situation. This centralized management has no CLI, no SSH, no FTP, no TFTP. Maybe these acronyms don't even mean something to you, but typically there are lots of different technologies used to manage networking infrastructure that are not that straightforward. We eliminate all of those. We provide one easy-to-use interface for managing and controlling your network, and you can even do it from your phone with a mobile app, and this works for all of the Meraki products. We support flexible network architectures as well, so we have the world's easiest site-to-site VPN that I've ever come across. You just say you want one, and it builds it for you. You don't need to put in all the parameters and the specifics of how that works, or the details of how it connects from one site to another. It works out all of that for you. All you know is you want to have this remote site connected to your main campus. And then we have this industry-leading visibility, control, and security. So we'll look at how the visibility is really important, and that's can be seen as like a really cool thing, seeing all this detail. But why is it important? Well, it's important because you then work out what controls you want to implement. So you can say, look, all these people are using a lot of Windows file sharing. Maybe I want to add some restrictions on that to ensure that people aren't sharing too many things or consuming all the bandwidth during peak hours. So with that, I now really am happy to introduce Benjamin Moeller, Manager of Information Technology at Navigator Schools, and hopefully, Ben, you're still on the line there.
I am, George. Thanks so much for the introduction.
Fantastic. I was getting a little concerned there. There was a little pause. I'm not sure if you were going to chime in, so great to hear you.
Well, welcome everybody, and I hope that my story is able to give you some insight to how great Meraki is able to work in the education environment. I've been working in information technology for education for over 10 years now, and I have been able to see many different solutions of the network in different schools and school districts. We are located, Navigator School is located in Northern California. We have 2 school sites, Gilroy Prep and Hollister Prep. Currently, we have 620 students, and we are growing every year until we reach 8th grade for our schools. We are a public charter school, which means we actually partner with the local school district, and we actually have the challenges of trying to find space in that school district to put our sites. We have over 100 employees, and I am the person managing the network for both sites and, of course, our support office. To give you a little bit of background. Oh, sorry, George.
I was going to say, so are you the only person managing the network and you have other things to do, or is this your only job?
Great question. I am the manager of I'm the manager of information technology, which means that I have a plethora, or I have many hats I wear, including managing our network.
Right. Wow. That sounds like quite a busy day.
Yeah, you could say that.
Cool. One of the challenges. I interrupted you. I hand it back over.
No worries. To give you a quick little history lesson of when I got introduced to Navigator Schools, they didn't have a full-time IT person, not even a site tech. And so when I came on campus, there was a current network infrastructure in place. It was more of a smorgasbord, I would have to say, of 10-year-old switches, 5-year-old switches, access points. We actually did, or they were actually having controllers control the access points, and they had a router at the front end. The problem I had when I walked into owning the network is I had very little visibility. I would have to SSH into each device individually, and it was more of an individual sport instead of it being like a football team or a soccer team where these devices should be working together. I had no idea. I could go to each one, but I couldn't see them all working together and what different protocols they were each working from. And again, having different ages of technology, it was very challenging of which each device would offer when it comes to connectivity and network infrastructure. So that was very, very challenging, and I would spend hours just having to troubleshoot and also investigate what I was walking into with this current infrastructure. They even had a third-party web filter, so we had same branded switches, same branded access points, and then a controller, and then we had a third-party web filter at the time, and they would not all play nice, as it were, together. And so I was continually having to play the middleman or the counselor between these devices to make sure on a daily level they were working. I would be experiencing drops and slowdowns with these systems, and again, I had other problems. I was troubleshooting computers, I was troubleshooting tablets, I was having to set up brand new classrooms, and working for both sites and support office. As you can imagine, my day was full. And the last thing I need, the last thing that I want, is network issues. In my opinion, the network should always be running, should always be reliable, and unfortunately, when I walked into Navigator Schools, it was actually my biggest problem. And of course, if George, that's okay, or do you want to know more information before I go to Meraki?
Oh, I'd like to ask a few more questions actually. So I'm keen to know what did the school want, or the schools want in terms of how the technology was meant to support education, how it wanted to be used in the classroom. Was it meeting those needs? I guess when you're looking at moving to a new technology, and in this case you've chosen Meraki. What was the aim? What did you want to get out of it, from rather than like the great configuration and management side of things, which we'll go into, but just like the higher level, how is this going to help the students?
Well, the design when I walked into these classrooms was they're using Apple TVs. They wanted to utilize AirPlay, so they wanted to wirelessly project their screens onto their projectors or TVs with AirPlay. And I won't get into the computer issues, but with the network was constantly dropping the AirPlay connection when I walked into Navigator Schools. They do PowerPoints, they do direct instruction with their PowerPoints, and they do it every day, at least 3 hours long each day. And so they needed AirPlay to work consistently without dropping, but unfortunately it would continuously drop, and it would be sporadic, and it would be continuous in some classrooms, and it would be working in other classrooms, and it was very challenging with that current infrastructure, the different ages of switches and access points and controllers, trying to get them all to work together and try to understand where are my hiccups. Even trying to look at the packet captures and trying to understand the speeds. I even had different cables. I had Cat 5s running with Cat 5Es and then Cat 6s. So you can imagine it was definitely a smorgasbord of issues that I was running into just to get one solution, AirPlay, which we used daily to work in the classroom.
Thank you very much. We've got a question coming in from Aaron. He's curious about the number of students and staff when you started, and the comparison to what the size might be now, and maybe the growth you expect in the future, and the need to move to Meraki.
That's a great question. So when I started at Navigator, we did have both sites. So Gilroy Prep was a K through, please forgive me here, I think it was K through 4th. Yep. So we have 2 classes per grade level. So that would be 60 times 5 grade levels. So we had about 300 students at that time for one school, and then we had a K through 3rd school at Hollister Prep. So we had about 420 students at the time, and staff was about 50, I want to say. My concerns, Aaron, you hit it right on the nose. My concerns with that network infrastructure in place was, how are we going to grow with that infrastructure, especially with very little visibility I had with it, and especially as we add more devices, we're going to have a higher demand on the network, and we're going to have speed issues, and we're going to have probably more drops. So with just answering that first part about the network, I was already concerned, and in my head I already knew I wanted to replace the entire networks at both sites. I didn't have the answer in my head at that time, but I knew we had to replace, we had to upgrade so that we could sustain and grow with more students and staff.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting thing, which is you can create a really good network infrastructure now, and what can happen is then suddenly everything grows, or realize it's good, and so they use it a lot more, and that knock-on effect is to then reduce the quality of it. And we've got another question coming from Jacob, who's particularly interested in your discussion of AirPlay and Apple TVs. He's asking if you have any tips on how to shape traffic in the Meraki wireless deployment to make it as smooth as possible. I think he's having some issues where it's not always as smooth as he wanted to be. Have you done any particular configuration, or maybe this is something we can sort of talk about in terms of the 1 AP per classroom? It might roll into that. What do you think?
I'm fine either way, and I definitely have an answer.
Well, let's go for the answer, and then we can move on to the next slide in a little bit, and maybe that'll roll some extra pointers for Jacob into the response.
Absolutely. Well, Jacob, I have to tell you, when we went to Meraki, Meraki has a great support team. When I was working with Meraki trying to possibly choose them, of course they're trying to sell me on their wonderful support, and I have to say that they were 100% correct. When we went to Meraki, I already made in the systems manager and through their help documents some improvements, but I still was having some AirPlay drops. So here's the biggest keys of success that I learned from my own and with Meraki support. One is that I learned definitely make sure that the Wi-Fi is WPA2 only. When I started with Meraki, I had it on WPA and /WPA2. That was a huge performance gain. One thing Meraki also recommended was to have two VLANs, one for your regular clients, and then the second was just for AirPlay. Now, as you would see my other slides, that we don't have, in my opinion, a ton of devices. We were less than 1,000 still, and so I really didn't think even that many devices on one VLAN would be a problem. But I did actually listen to the recommendations, and I created a VLAN where all my Apple TVs are on VLAN 2. And with their Bonjour forwarding service through Meraki, I turned that on, and man, I have seen definitely an increase in reliability and connectivity with AirPlay just by putting all my AirPlay devices on their own VLAN and then utilizing the Bonjour forwarding. Those are the two big ones in my head right now. I'll definitely mention another if I think about it.
Fantastic stuff. Thanks very much for providing those insights, Vendor. And Jacob, I hope those give you some tips on how to improve your AirPlay performance. Let's move on and talk about how the network is with Meraki and well, let's start with a holistic network with all Meraki hardware. So it's not just wireless we're talking about here. There is a whole range of Meraki products you have installed.
Yes, and then George, if you don't mind us, to go along with that, I want people to know that we not jump in with all of the entire solution with Meraki. We first started small with testing their access points. Back then it was the MR18s with Systems Manager. So that gave me a taste of how well is their cloud solution and how well do their devices work. So that's actually where I started. We did not just jump in head first and buy all three components. Now having all three components. So obviously I was impressed with System Manager and the access point, but now having all three. So we have the security appliance, we have all Meraki switches, and we have the Meraki access points, the MR34s. Oh my goodness, the visibility is absolutely amazing. I got to give you this quick story. This summer, our Hollister Prep site actually moved to a whole new site, and we had to build the hardwired infrastructure, including with installing the devices. And so what I was able to do when I got the switches, when I got the access points and the security appliance, when they shipped to me, I was able through the Systems Manager to name those devices and configure those devices before they ever were plugged in. So they were named by the classroom, named by the office, and I had all my settings, VPN, VLANs, etc., all set up, ready to go. And then I went on site with these devices. I began to plug them in, and through the Meraki app on my iPhone, I was able to see them start to light up, and I was able to see the traffic through that app already happening. And it was simple to give my site techs, who are basically desktop techs, I was able to give them these devices, and they can go install them, plug them in, and boom, the device within just a minute was already set up and already working. And we came down to the line. I mean, the Friday before school starting, it was when the network was finally up. But that day, teachers could start working, and I didn't have to worry about offering more support or more setup. The network was running, the network was good to go, and it was just simple. Again, it just takes minutes with the setup, whereas I'm used to hours and days having to do that. Regarding visibility to the network, again, I mentioned the app. There's a wonderful Meraki app, but even through the web browser, you're able to see things light up and go online right away. You can see the traffic. You can see their configuration. And George, when we get to the demo, I definitely want you to show the topology. The topology is absolutely amazing when you're able to see the map of your actual network. I already talked about the customer service. You can call, you can email, and they get back to you very quickly, and they have wonderful tips, wonderful advice. Being a manager of IT, it doesn't allow me to be an expert in every little thing regarding the network. And no matter how much schooling and experience I have, there's always new things happening. There's always new strategies coming up, and the Meraki Support have been my experts. They've been my mentors almost, which has been awesome. And again, to have somebody you can rely on like that is great. And then talk about support demands of growing technology in the classroom. We're leaving the Chromebook behind and going to an iPad solution in our classrooms. So we're adding more iPads every year, and obviously more students every year. And so I'm able to see even this year how adding these devices are affecting our network, and where I perhaps needed to make improvements, or where things are running well. So again, it's actually, I would say it's fun almost, or it is fun, using Meraki because of how easy and simple it is, and how much you see. I mean, once we do the demo, you're going to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I need to make sure that we don't get so enthusiastic in our conversation that we forget to include sufficient time for the demo. So I will certainly make sure that we fit in a good bit of time shortly to go through that. I do have a question from David. I'm not sure if this is something you configured, so I feel like this is maybe a two-part question. Well, I'll hand over you to Benjamin to answer it from your side, and then I can answer it from a Meraki side as to what's possible. He says, does Meraki authenticate users and put them on the appropriate VLAN? Is that something you've deployed at Navigator Schools?
There isn't, the way that I've done VLAN, I know there's definitely a way to do that based off the user. The way that I've done that is more of the old school approach, where I've assigned the port on the switch to a certain VLAN. The way that I'm not there yet with the users in Meraki. I do assign them to the devices, but like I said, right now with VLAN, it's basically I assign on the port of the switch. So if you plug into a certain port, it either goes to VLAN 1 or VLAN 2. But I do know, and eventually I'll probably get there as I add more and more devices and users, I know you can assign users to VLANs.
Yeah, so I'd just like to extend that you can have VLAN assignment based on an SSID, based on an SSID in relation to an access point. So you could have a different VLAN ID per floor, but for the same SSID. You can have VLANs assigned per user group, or you can have it assigned per individual user, and that can be done by policies in the Meraki network, or it can be done by things such as radius attributes. So if you want to return a radius attribute for each individual user with a different VLAN assignment, then you can do that as well. So David, you can configure that in a number of different ways, and as Benjamin's talked about, if you have any questions about which one's best for you and you have a Meraki network, call the support team, and I'm sure they'd be happy to explain what's best for you. So let's move on to the performance side of things. So you've got one AP classroom at the moment. Tell us a bit more about the performance aspects of your design.
All right. So the performance of one AP per classroom. Now, we were doing this before we went Meraki, so we had an AP in every room, but the visibility was very low compared to what I have now with Meraki. You're able to put reduced power on the APs to help with the current bandwidth. You're able to map out where the APs are in Meraki, which gives you good visibility. The performance is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I had the MR18s, the MR18s when I started with Meraki, and now we have the MR34s. So it went from BGN to AC, and the speeds there are just absolutely amazing. Our AirPlay was a little bit laggy when we're on the MR18s in my old system, and now with the 34s, that lag has gone down to maybe a point of a second, if even there. The internal network, I mean, we use, please forgive me, AirDrop with our devices, with transferring files back and forth. I mean, I'm even transferring video files with AirDrop, or setting up new computers, and I'm transferring gigabytes of data over AirDrop, and it's just seamless. I mean, you might wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but it's no big deal. the APs themselves are able to talk to one another and transfer the load if needed. I don't know if anybody out there's had this problem with Chromebooks, but back in the day, especially with the 303 Samsungs, there was issues with the Wi-Fi card not able to jump on the 5 gigahertz. It would always stay on the 2.4. And so I know several of us out there would create a second SSID to be 5 gigahertz only for the Chromebooks. I had that set up with my old system. With Meraki, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't need 2 SSIDs, one for 2.4, one for 5. The Chromebooks, or the Meraki system, forces the Chromebooks onto that 5 gigahertz instead of the 2.4. So it actually talks much better with the devices, and so again, that's some less headache there with having multiple SSIDs. You have the floor plan visibility, which is great. You can see how things are assigned on the map. I love the real-time data. You can see how much bandwidth has gone through your access point. With the security appliance, you can see what your load is on your modem and how much data is going through. You're able to do, one thing I've done is I've actually limited all my devices to no more than 10 megabits 10 megabits per device, and that's helped the load, especially at my bigger site, with internet bandwidth. But the access points are great. You're able to see what clients are connected to what access points, and that's fun for troubleshooting. You know, if you're in a room, you're like, wait, why am I slow? You can check real quick on Meraki to see if you're connected to a AP far away, and usually you're not on the Meraki system. And again, like it says, troubleshooting is with these live tools is a breeze. Usually it takes me a minute or just minutes to figure out a problem and able to resolve it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find particularly useful when trying to sort out these RF performance things is the third radio built into the access points. This gives you that insight into interference, and it makes the access points much smarter at choosing channels and sorting out their transmit power and allowing you to have this high density deployment, which I really see as something that is the most commonly used in education. Because of the demands and the number of people all using the technology at the same time. Benjamin, I just want to spend 60 seconds or so. We have a great comment coming from Tim on the Q&A, who has a really he's really used the Meraki technology to the maximum here, and he's just given us an explanation in the Q&A panel as to how he's configured it. So I thought I'd share it with everyone. And the thing that he's talking about is we talked how you can use radius attributes to apply the VLAN ID. But the other thing you can do is you can use the filter ID attribute in the radius message when a user connects to apply a network group policy in the Meraki dashboard on the wireless access points and on the security appliance. So group policies are more than just VLAN assignment. This can be all of the group policy functionality that we offer, which we'll go through in the demo. So that's firewalling, traffic shaping, and various other things. And that can be applied individually when a user connects. And Tim seems to have a really powerful setup here where he's reduced the number of SSIDs he has per access point by, instead of having those firewall rules and traffic shaping rules and like rules that assigned to an SSID, they're applied to the users based on their radius filter ID, and then he has a number of radius servers which split the load balancing of the client authentication. So really quite a powerful setup there, Tim. Great to see you're using the technology to the maximum advantage. Again, if anyone else is interested in finding out more about that, then contact your Meraki support team, or if you're going to trial the Meraki technology, you can ask our free trial team, and they'll be able to tell you about that type of deployment and how you can get the most out of it. So thanks for adding that. That's a really good comment. So let's move on and have a look at some of the wireless stuff, Benjamin. Wireless is all great and something that Meraki is really well known for, but love to hear more about some of the switching and security side of things, and I guess how you replace this third-party content filter as well. So let me hand it back over to you.
Okay, great. Yes, so we have also the switches and the security appliance as well. With the Meraki system, we give a graphic view of your switch ports. It shows you what's actually plugged in by a green background color, and the green color even has different shades, one for 100 megs or one for 1,000 to identify your connection speed. It even gives you a lightning bolt if you have a PoE switch, so you know it's a PoE device. So quickly you're able to look at a switch and just see what ports are actually being used at that time. You're able to see on the page actually what bandwidth, again, what clients are even connected to that. And again, it's easy to find things if you're not able to find them. When we went from the old system to the Meraki system, there were still cables and there's still ports being used I wasn't aware of. And when we plugged them into the Meraki switch, I was able to locate and find things very quickly. The topology. I love the topology. You click on it, boom, you see from the security appliance to the switches, and from the switches to the access points, and you can hover over it and it tells you which device that is, and it just gives you a clear layout of what the topology is in that network. Quick troubleshooting with live tools. It's just the fact that we had a PoE phone and it showed that it was working. It didn't even say network down, but it's being powered. And I was able to go to that switch and I had a black background with a power symbol. So that told me, okay, the switch is actually powering the device, but it appears it's not getting a network connection. So then I went to that port and then I did a cable test for that port, and it told me the cable was actually bad. And so that told me most likely the cable running from the switch to the device. And so that was, I mean, it was seriously less than 5 minutes. I was able to identify, okay, this is not getting a network connection, and here's why. It's because of the cable, and I did it all from my computer. I didn't have to climb up in from the ceiling. I didn't have to test different ports. I just did it all from my computer, and I already knew what needed to be done. Regarding the security appliances, we have one static IP coming into our system, and then of course we use a local subnet. So you actually have to plug in via network cable into the security appliance and set up the static IP. That I was a little like, oh, how long is this going to take? But honestly, I plugged in. I didn't have to SSH or anything. I just plugged in. Boom! I got this nice little GUI, and I set it up within less than a minute. So that was just seamless. I like the bandwidth limiting. We have only 100 meg connection for both devices, or sorry, both sites, and we are adding more and more devices each year. And so it is nice that I'm able to put from the security appliance in the bandwidth limitation. Now you can do that from the switch. You could do that also from the access points as well. But it's nice I'm able to set that rule from the security appliance, and then it applies to everybody. The site-to-site VPN. I mean, that was the easiest VPN I've ever had to set up. It's all through Systems Manager. It was just, again, it made my life easy. I just did it within about 5 minutes or less. The client VPN, again, that was simple. I was able to set up the client VPN within minutes and then be able to connect to it from my device or my computer. Again,
I'm noticing a theme here. The word simplicity seems to come up quite frequently.
Well, and again, I mean, just to kind of go off course for just a moment here, you know, I don't have a network admin. I don't have someone here that's paid just to run the network. And so the fact that I'm in charge of the network, but I have many other buckets I must take care of, it's wonderful of how Meraki works. It's just wonderful how quickly I can do things so I can move on to what really matters, and that's the classroom. And then last but not least, the content filtering in the Meraki security appliance is wonderful. It's robust. It does have Google Safe Search built in as well, that's a feature that we highly care about. So it had to have that feature. Again, it works really well. You have, of course, the typical blacklist and whitelist capability, but it has a ton of filtering and ton of options. That's probably the only thing that didn't take minutes because of all the options that you can set.
Cool. Well, we've got a couple of questions come in. A question from Tim. He wants to know from our previous slide, did you manually edit any of the power, transmit powers for the access points when you deployed them in the classroom, or did you leave them all on automatic? Because you can do them all manually, all automatic, or you can do like a hybrid where you just choose a few that you want to change. Is that something that you adjusted, or did you let the dashboard do its thing?
I let the dashboard do its thing.
Okay, cool. And we had a question come in from Jacob about the client VPN. What client VPN do we use? Well, the Meraki doesn't have a client VPN application. We support all the built-in OS ones, so iOS, Android, Windows, and OS X. We support all those built-in client VPN applications. So I know that we're running out of time here, and we still haven't gone to the demo. We've just got so many things to talk about. So I do want to move the slides on. I'll try and answer some of the questions as you go through the discussion on Systems Manager, Benjamin. Make sure we get everyone's questions answered. So if I hand it back over to you, tell us more about Systems Manager and the MDM side of things.
All right, sounds good. We do have these Macs and Windows machines over in our site. The remote desktop tool is very convenient. You have a list of your devices that are currently online, and you just pick the one you want to connect to, and boom, within a couple of seconds, you'll have access to the remote desktop of the device. Also, maybe we'll show it in our demo, there's actually two ways of doing remote desktop in Meraki. One, there's a list of devices available, and then if you actually go to that device in Systems Manager, there's actually a remote desktop tool in there too. So it's very easy if you're troubleshooting or trying to look for things. It's very easy to connect to a device via remote desktop. And I've used many different remote desktop tools. Very impressed with theirs. Pushing out Wi-Fi profiles and other settings to our iPads and even our Macs as well. It's it's unbelievable. Seriously. I've used Apple's OS X server with their systems profile. That's a great system, but with Meraki, I was a little concerned about, well, it's cloud-based. How long is it going to take for when I change a profile or when I change a setting for those iPads to get it? And I use Apple Configurator to set up our iPads with apps right now, and so I had to turn off the do not delete apps. Well, guess what? When I do that for Meraki, within seriously a minute to a minute and a half, and I did time it, the setting was applied to my iPad, to my entire cart, to my entire site for that being. And so when you can trust Meraki that when you do change settings and when things are pushed out to your iPad or configuration changes, the cloud, it really works very quickly. And again, the theme is minutes here, I guess. It's so nice to not have to wait 30 minutes, an hour, etc. It's so nice that you know that the configuration is going to go out right to your devices and you can keep working. Regarding to the tagging, man, it was so new to me, this whole tagging system with Meraki, and I can admit I got confused at first. It's great now. I've been using tagging now for, gosh, hopefully 6 months, maybe longer than that. And it's so nice that when you apply a profile to certain tags, you know that the correct devices are being worked on and you're not accidentally touching the wrong devices. That is just peace of mind. Going on to location services, I gotta tell you a funny story real quick. I'll try to keep it to 20 seconds. I was working remotely one day from my home office, and they told me they lost 2 iPads, and they thought maybe they were stolen. And so I went onto Meraki, and I told them, no, the iPads are not just on site, but I could tell them which building they're in because of the location services they have in Meraki. And so I kept telling them, no, but they're there. I promise you they're there. They just checked in again. They're there. And they found the iPads that they fell actually in the iPad cart behind, so they couldn't see them. But it was so great how easily I could tell them where it is instead of spending hours and days trying to find these devices. We do use iPads one-to-one in some of our classrooms, and so we do distribute through that system. That's probably a longer story, so George, please let me know if I should talk more about that. But moving on to single app mode. Last year, we didn't have teacher assistants, and so I was the one pushing out single app mode. That's where you lock an app to a device, and it's very important for testing, especially with SBAC. So and it worked really well. We just scheduled it, so I would turn on single app mode for certain devices or all the devices at a certain time and turn them off. This year, we're going to be using the teacher assistants, so now the power is in teacher hand to turn on single app mode. And again, the timing. That is crucial in classes, crucial in education. We can't have our students, our teachers waiting for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, or 30 minutes. It's got to be almost instant. And guess what? With single app mode with Meraki, it practically is. It seriously would take about a minute or two, and the apps was locked to the device. And then the one thing I think is kind of nice is that I can assign these apps in Meraki to different tags. And so through the Meraki app on the iPad, our teachers can look at recommended apps. I mean, there's a ton of apps out there, but we at Navigator Schools, we do recommend a certain amount of apps to have on their iPads, but they don't have to have all of them. So instead of me trying to download all of them for them, they just go to the Meraki app, they click on the app button, and boom, there's a list of recommended apps for them to add to their iPad. It's a great system. It's giving the user some of that power of how to set up their device.
Fantastic. So we've got a couple of questions come in. One from Victor. He's interested to know about Systems Manager and whether or not you're using the classic legacy free version, or if you're paying for Systems Manager. And if you are, what made you move, or what were the benefits of the paid-for version? Obviously, I know working at Meraki what the benefits are, but he'd like to know what you saw the benefits are.
So quick little story again. At my previous district I was working at, I did use the free version of Systems Manager. I was impressed. It was definitely ahead of its time back then. And then I used the free version a little bit here at Navigator School, so I'm definitely familiar with it. It did work well. When it was this summer, when we were looking at buying the rest of the devices, it was approached me, hey, want to get the paid version. I was a little skeptical at first, but then we started talking about the features and the differences between the free version and the paid version. And I'm telling you today, now that I've been using the paid version for months, several months now, it is definitely well worth it, especially, I would say, the support. Now, I know it's not really in Systems Manager itself, but the support you get with it is absolutely wonderful, because instead of waiting 24, 48 hours, it's very quick. I don't want to say instant. I'm not sure if we have time to get into all the details of the differences, and George, you might be the guy to really explain that more, but I definitely say it's worth it.
Well, I'm going to say it is worth it. I think one of the things that I'd point out is your comments regarding Teacher's Assistant and the single app mode for the classroom, where the teachers can then control their classroom. That is part of the paid-for feature set. So if you want to make the most of that, then you do need to use the full version of Systems Manager. Now, Tanya is waving at me frantically, and I've got some comments coming in on the Q&A. Demo. Can we get on with the demo? And yes, I feel like we're going to overrun, so I'm going to just pause the slides. I'm going to head straight onto the demo, so we're not missing out on anything there. So just give me a second, and I will log in. So what we're going to be doing is having a look at your live network, aren't we, Benjamin? This isn't a demo network. This is the real deal, as it were.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so hopefully that should now be working. Let me just check. It looks like we're all good. Fantastic. So guide me through. What should we go have a look at? What would you love to show people about your network, the Meraki dashboard? What are the best things you would recommend people try and use?
Absolutely. Well, let's first jump to Gilroy Prep Network, and I would love just first to show the topology. I think that speaks volume.
Okay, I'm just going to move my windows around a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Here we go. So under Network Wide, we go Topology.
Now, I would have loved if I could have seen this when I first started here at Navigator. I had no idea what was connected to what. The fact that here you can see our security appliance to the GP Great Space switch, and then you can see the little rectangles represent your switches, and then the little round dots represent our access points. This is, I mean, I used to build these in different programs. It would take me a couple hours to get a nice little printout of this, and now this is just too easy. Look at it. You just look at it and you can hit print or download if you wanted to, and then submit a report. And here you can see all the names and stuff. If I can just real quick, George, we had a fiber line go down a few weeks ago, and it so happened I was actually looking at the topology for other reasons, and all of a sudden the colors went down. And I'm like, what just happened? And we had a construction crew working on one of our new portables, and they actually dropped one of those big concrete lids on the fiber line. And so it's nice to even get that visual of when things are actually working and not working. All right, so let's move on to, if you could go back to clients, George.
Okay, let's go have a look at the clients.
So this is just this is boom, here I can see the Gilroy Prep network, here I can see a list. A couple things I like here. You can definitely sort it by status, but by name or description they use, last seen. But George, can you click on that plus button that allows you to add the different columns to this list on the right-hand side?
Let's go over here. Yep.
This is phenomenal. This is so cool. You can choose what information you want to see on this page. I like the fact I can see the OSs real quick. Hey, what's running iOS 8 or iOS 9 just came out. I can see the different IP addresses. I can see the usage. You can add more, take things away. I love the fact that you can customize this page and really see the data that you care about the most each and every day. I find if we look above where we see that actual nice little graph of the data and that little pie chart, I love looking at that. That is so neat to see what kind of traffic is happening across my network daily. And you can also tell it to say, show it to me for the last day, show me for the last 2 hours, show me for the week, as George goes over there.
Yep, I'll try and keep up.
And then also, I'm talking about this piece right now, guys, and everybody. I like the fact that if you go to network-wide, George, if we can, let's show them the summary report. Beautiful. So here's a nice little summary report. You can actually show. You can choose how you look at it. So George, if you can, click on over last week. Now choose security appliance or choose appliance. I'm sorry.
Yep.
And then let's just do over the last month. How about that?
Okay. Well, let's look at last month. Click go.
So I'm not used to having this kind of tool. I can just see all this kind of data here. I can see my usage. I love the fact that it gives me a daily average on my clients, and I actually give a report out weekly of that number. You can see the top clients by usage, which is, I think, phenomenal. You can learn, okay, which Apple TV or which classroom is using all the data, for example, or which teachers are highly using it.
There.
Yeah, I got the back cave, our little conference room. And then what's interesting, not interesting, but if you go back up to the top, George, on the right-hand side, this part is really neat. You can actually say email this report or schedule report emails. This is huge. You can actually have it emailed to you I have it emailed to me on a daily basis right now, actually, but it can come to you on a monthly, weekly. You choose how it comes to you, and it comes right to your inbox, and you can see this data right in your inbox without even going to Systems Manager, and it gives you insight and visibility to what is happening on a daily, weekly, or monthly on level. So this is just great information right here. Let's go to... Sorry,
yeah, what I just wanted to say was, for everyone who's still on the webinar, we are sort of we are running on a little long, so please discuss in the Q&A anything that you'd really love to see. If there's something you would really like us to see, put it in there, and I can bring it up. We're going to keep going through, and Benjamin asked, I want you to show me all of the things that you're the most excited about, because I really love hearing these stories. But we'd also love to know what you on the webinar would like to see as well. So it's gone a little quiet on the Q&A panel. I guess that's because you're all paying attention. So let's have a few more questions come in. Let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll try and show it for you. So with that, Benjamin, back to you, and we'll see what comes in.
All right. Well, let me know too who wants to see the System Manager part of this too with the devices. A few things, George, if you can, just briefly go through. Click on like switch and wireless on the left-hand side menu, and maybe just click on switches, just so they can kind of get the idea of how you can see your inventory. Click on one of those switches. It doesn't matter to me. You actually click on the GP room 16. I'm sorry. I guess, oh no, that's fine. That's fine. So here you can quickly see the IP address. You can see which ports are being used for PoE. I don't know if you can see, but if you notice, there's a dark green and there's light green identifying the connection speed, and of course you can see the fiber connection. So this is kind of a cool little layout. And then if you can, George, go to one of our access points.
And the great thing is I'm clicking on it from inside the switch page. So I'm clicking here, and it's directly navigated me from the switch page into the AP page. I'm a big fan of that, because you don't have to go and navigate through a whole different interface.
That's a great point. Great point. Here you can see, here we have GP room 7. You can see current clients. Again, I love the fact that you can also see current data. Not only can you see history, but you can see current, and then you can see actually, here you can see the Ethernet traffic, and the usage is down below. It's so amazing that I could be in a meeting and someone could report an issue to me, and boom, I can go on and not just see what was happening 2 weeks ago, 2 hours ago, but I can see it now. What is happening on that switch, on that access point? It's absolutely amazing. All right, George, anything you want to point out here? Yes.
Yeah, well, I think what we should do is we now have a ton of questions coming in, and let's see if we yeah, it's gone from silence to a whole stream of them, which is fantastic. So let's start at the top. David would like to have at the look at the content filtering and reporting for content filtering. Shall we go have a look at that?
That's fine.
Where would you like me to go?
Oh, sorry.
You direct me to the. I know where it is, but you
Um,
tell me what you would like to show.
I apologize. So yeah, we can go first to go ahead and click on the content filtering.
Okay.
And so here you can see currently I have a current, I would say, a basic filtering system. Working in education, I try to leave the decision making to the principals or to our school site leaders on what to be filtered, so that they can own that responsibility to our parents. And so this is what we're currently using to filter. You can see I have the blocked website categories. I have the web search filtering on. And then I have I don't have YouTube Safe Schools on yet, but that's a different story with YouTube. And then you can see I have the URL category list to top sites only for higher performance. Go ahead and let's go to, or do you have a question right now, George?
So I think one of the things that I would just add is, I'm not sure I've got it set up, but I'll quickly just go and have a look, is that this is like a global content filtering list. So this affects everyone, but you can actually add individual ones. So this is using the group policy. So say you want to have different rules for students versus teachers, or different grades, you can come in and you can do that by creating a policy. So in here, this is the network policy section. I could go, and where it says blocked website categories, I can either append to an existing base level, or I can override. So I could come in here and override it and say, okay, I'm just going to block, say, hacking, for example. So this overrides the existing global one, or we could just append it and then set this to a particular group of users. So it really allows you to be very granular in how that's set up. That's just one of the things I'd like to add for anyone who wants to get a bit more control, or maybe you didn't even know that was possible yet, Benjamin, but you can now add this as a way of adding even more detail. So the next question is from Jacob. He's interested in the VPN setup. So, well, I mean,
Yeah,
what is there to show on the VPN side of things?
Right.
Let's leave this page. Let's go to site VPN first. So,
so that's it, everybody. That's the page for site-to-site VPN.
and he's not joking. It's pretty awesome. I tend to like doing this in the demo where I say, okay, we have no site-to-site VPN, and then I say, okay, which one would people like? Do you want split tunnel or full tunnel? So split tunnel is quite popular, and then you say, do you want fully meshed or do you want hub and spoke? And most people are interested in fully meshed, which is the default, and that's it. And you click save, and away you go. All that key exchange, that IP addresses, the encryption protocols, all of that's managed for you by the Meraki dashboard. So yeah, it's really very straightforward. So we've got a question from, I think it's Amir, about is Systems Manager and MDM the same thing? So Systems Manager is the MDM product from Meraki. That is something we should probably go and have a look at next, I think, maybe, because we've talked a lot about the network. So shall we go and have a look at that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, where shall I go? Shall I just go to the Systems Manager network?
You got it.
Okay, let's go have a look in there. Okay.
So here we have just that generic page where we actually can just sort or search by different, the names, the connectivity, location. What I like to look at is for my laptop user, my computer users, you'll see there some of those under disk percentage used. If, George, you can kind of move your cursor around that column, you'll see some green, you'll see some orange, and you'll see some red. I like that because then I can easily tell those users, hey, your capacity for your drive is almost full. You need to get rid of some data or transfer some data to a different computer or drive. But again, look how quick visibility it is to even users that might fill their hard drive up by accident. So that's just one little point there. George, do you have a focus area you want to go to?
I'm just, I have many, but I really want to make sure we answer the the people on the webinar's questions. Let's see what else is coming in. Um, we've got Kevin asking about purchasing apps for up, or are you just managing
We
apps
do.
the same way? Okay, let's go have a look at
I'm doing them
VPP.
both, actually.
Talk us through your VPP setup.
Okay, so one thing I came from Apple Systems Profile Manager. So that's where I came from. So you'll see actually a list of a lot of free apps that I had to use through VPP. But we do actually have some paid apps. So for example, if you do like Notability, you can just type that in, George. We can find that app. So there we have Notability. Those are actually for some of our special ed students and some of our teachers. We actually, I assign that to them. So if you click on that Notability, you'll actually see a list to some of our users. So yes means it's actually licensed to that user, and of course you see their email address there to who it's actually going to. Now there's several ways of how a user actually gets to that app, and that's probably a different conversation. But this is just one example of how I use the VPP program with Meraki.
Fantastic. So I see we're now at the hour. There are still a lot of people on the webinar and questions coming in. Benjamin, if you have a couple more minutes, are you free to keep going? I want to make sure we can cover off as much as possible. We're fortunate in that we don't have anyone else needing our webinar room. This is the last one for today, so we can overrun a bit. If you're happy to stay on, then I'd love to keep going and try and cover off as many of these people's questions as possible. Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's see what else is coming in. So let's see, so many questions. So with the purchasing, let's have a look at the normal apps rather than just through VPP. So if you want to do that as well, that's done through this app management page. Tell us a little more about how you sort of scope that with tags, because I guess that's one of the really powerful functions of Systems Managers, how you use those tags to assign the apps to the right people.
Great question. Actually, once it comes up here, we'll see how I'm using tags. And as we're waiting for it to load, tags are wonderful, by the way. I was a little scared of them at first, but now that I'm using them a lot, they really make life easy. George, is this still loading on your end?
I think I might have something running a little slow. It's not loading on my end. Maybe considering the time, just for those of you who are asking questions, because it is the end of the webinar, how do you get your free access points? For those of you who are interested in that, please visit our website and there are further details. If you leave the webinar, then we have a very questionnaire asking you what you thought about the webinar, and if you'd like to see anything else, we'd love to know what you thought. If you thought this was great, tell us. If you thought it was terrible, tell us. And if there's anything else you would like to see, then please fill that in there. We can then make sure we have more of what you want and less of what you don't. So let's pick one last thing to have a look at. What should we look at? I'm going to leave it to you, Benjamin. You've been telling us so many great stories. Pick your the favorite thing you want to go have a look at in Systems Manager. The apps page seems to be a little slow right now. Oh dear. By
the way, I've never seen this happen, guys. For everybody currently watching, this has never happened. I've never seen this before.
So this is just proving to you all, it's all live. There's no smoke and mirrors here. This is the real deal.
I would say let's focus on settings. Let's go under MDM, go to settings. So this is where how you can actually push out your different settings to your different devices or rules. And here, perfect example, George, thank you. Here you can see that I actually have something called student iPads. I have two tags, a student tag and an iPad tag. I did that purposely because I also use, we have a Lego lab with MacBook Pros. And so this tells the device, okay, yes, you're a student, and also this is for iPads only, because I might have something set for MacBook Pros. And then if we do see the clients in the scope, which is really nice, and then go ahead and click on restrictions if you can, George.
Okay.
And then here you can see I can set all the restrictions for these specific groups of devices, and then you can, which is really nice. I mean, there's a ton of different restrictions, and then keep going though. You'll notice on the left-hand side there's web clips, and for you out there that have iOS or Android devices, web clips are basically those bookmarks on your homepage of a web thing. So we actually have a compass, we call it compass, is our student dashboard of different links to access. And so I was able to push out one web clip to hundreds of devices at one time. How cool is that? The same thing is true with Illuminate and Reading Plus. There's other web clips I pushed out. This feature is just amazing. And of course, I do have a Wi-Fi profile as well to these devices. These settings really make life wonderful with these devices. What's cool is that when you start to configure these iPads, you enroll them to Meraki, they connect to your Wi-Fi. It's absolutely amazing. And for out there, if you're using iOS devices, definitely look into using deploy.apple.com. That really makes your life easy with setting up these devices when they come out of the box.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to think we're going to have to call it time there. We have talked excessively, so let's just move back to the final slide of today's session. So if you like what you heard, if you thought the technology looks right for your environment, then we do risk a free evaluation, so you can try all of the products. No deposit required, free shipping both ways, and we can give you technical assistance in setting it up. So if you want to try out the Meraki wireless or switching or security, or you can get started with the mobile device management today without us even having to send you anything, you can just sign up on our website, then please let us know. Contact your Meraki representative for further info, and you can find pricing, licensing information, and more details on the products on our website, meraki.cisco.com. I want to thank Benjamin once again for such an amazing insight into how you've been using the Meraki technology. Love the enthusiasm for the Meraki cloud management. Is there any final words you would like to add?
Thank you so much for including me. I hope my participation has been helpful to the ones out there for thinking about Meraki, and even for the ones currently using Meraki. Hopefully it shows that it's definitely a great product. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well. My name is Benjamin Moeller, and I work for Navigator Schools.
Benjamin, thank you once again. Really, really great stories on today's webinar. Thank you everyone for attending. As I said, we'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have 60 seconds or so, fill in the form at the end of today's session. And once again, thank you for attending and have a great day.